Hi, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Katya Kovalenko. I'm a presentation and data designer based in Barcelona. Today, we're going to talk about presentation design and how to improve your presentations. I recently launched a course on Domestika, Principles of Presentation Design. And when I started working on the content, I had absolutely no idea of what was about to happen in the world, that we will go on a lockdown and will be forced to work from home. So many people started to do their presentation, maybe even for the first time in their lives. And I think what's tricky about presentations is that although the software is available for everyone and everyone can access it, you still require some design knowledge and design skills. So this is why I think the timing for this course was actually perfect. In the Domestika course, I talk a lot about how to build a presentation from scratch, building narrative structure, the texts, and the art direction for the deck. And in this live, what I want to do is to focus more on the actual design of the slides, okay? So I'm going to show you a redesign of the presentation that I did for a real client a while ago. And I'm going to show you some of the things that we might improve in our normal corporate presentations. So I'm going to share my screen. You probably see it now. Now, this is the original presentation. I obviously replaced the branding and the name of the client. And as you can see, the presentation is quite simple. You've probably seen this kind of presentations a lot of time. I think it's interesting in this case to show this kind of presentation and not a pitch deck, for example, that can be much more creative and with a lot more design. Because this is something that everyone can need. As you can see, the color consistency, for example, is pretty good in this presentation. They have this purple color everywhere. But in terms of the fonts, I can see a mix of different, very standard typographies like Arial. There are some Helvetica and Calibri even, so they clearly didn't put a lot of effort into selecting the right fonts. So I think that can be improved. Also, you can see an example of a table that you never know what to do with a table like this, right? You can see that some of the texts are aligned to centered and others are aligned to the left. So there is some improvement that we can do here. Also, there is this icon situation that I think also can be improved, because right now the icons that you see here doesn't have the same style, doesn't have a lot of visual consistency. There's also a slide like this that is a bit confusing, I think, because of the layout. You don't really know if this text goes with this image or with this one. So we will see what we can do here. Also, in this kind of slides, you can see that the person who did this presentation, I feel like they tried to fill every pixel, every inch of the slide with text, which is not really a good practice. Then here is another table. There is this slide. We're going to see how to make it more visual. And a closing slide like this. So I'm going to open now the redesigned version. And actually, I'm going to redesign this first slide in live. So I'm going to make a copy. Make it slightly bigger so you can see. Now, the design is all about visual hierarchy. So I don't want to add any extra elements to the design. I want to work with exactly what they have at the moment. So I'm not going to add any extra images or any extra elements, maybe just replacing some of the icons. So in this case, in the cover, we only have 3 elements. We have this image here, and we have the client name and the title of the slide. So the first thing to do is to decide which of the elements on the slide is the most important one. And then what can we do to highlight it and to enhance it? So in this case, the title for me is the most important thing, right? So we're going to make this title bigger. I'm going to also select different typography. I'm not going to enter in any detail about how to select typography right now. I'm just, I have a little bit of selection of my favorite types. For example, this one is very round and simple sans serif font, which I think looks great. I'm going to make it even bigger. And the name of the client can be way smaller. I often get asked as well how to decide the relationship between the size of the font, right? So there is a typography rule that says that the relationship between 2 different sizes should be double, in a meaning that, for example, if your body text is set to 10 pixels, then the subtitle should be 20 and the title should be 40. So every time you double the size. Again, those rules, we're talking about design, so it's not, there's anything scientific about it, but I think it's a good starting point. So in our case, if we apply this rule just like that, it will be, let's say, 100 points for the title and 50 for the subtitle. So this is how it looks like right now. But in my case, I want to create a bit more contrast. So I'm going to make the title a little bit bigger and the subtitle a little bit smaller. Again, the rules are made to break them, right? Okay. I'm going to try with the caps. Perfect. Now, even with the title this big, I think the image still draws a lot of attention to it. And I think in this case, it doesn't communicate much because it's not the real product that she's holding in her hands. It's nothing specific. So I think it would be better to send this image back and try to kind of blend it into the background. So I see that this image was originally cropped, so I can bring another parts back to it. And I'm going to set the transparency to make it almost transparent. Oops. Something like that. Okay, you can see that I also left a little bit of space on the sizes of the image, just to integrate it even more into a slide. And the last thing I'm going to do is to set the color of the title to a very, very light purple. Okay, perfect. Just to see the difference. Now let's move on to the next slide. Here we have the table here. What I want to do for the rest of the slides, because of course the cover page can be a little bit more creative always, but then the rest of the slides are pretty text heavy, content heavy. So one option is to leave it just like that with a white background and black text. But I'm going to try to integrate it more with the colors of the brand. So I will set all the background of all the rest of the slides to a light purple, and the text would be dark purple. Okay, so now I can get rid of this stripe, which is kind of old-fashioned, I think, and just focus more on the content of the slides. So in case of this table, I'm not going to show you the real process behind redesigning it because it's quite tedious and it's a lot of back and forth and trying different things and playing around the size of the text and stuff like that. So I'm going to directly show you the result, okay? This is how the slide looks like after the redesign. You can see that the title stands out, but it doesn't draw all the attention to it. And the table itself, I think, look much more clean and organized right now. So I got rid of the background of the table, and I just kept this structure with thin white lines, just to, to remind that this is a table. And then I set all the text to be aligned to the left. Now, I think what's important in table design is to make sure that all the texts inside the table, inside the cells, have exactly the same style, right? So to check, you can select the cells manually, like that. And you can go to here to the format and just check again that all the text have the same font, the same weight, same size, same color, and also, very important, the spacing between the lines. You can see how it changes. Okay, so this way, it looks much more organized than the original one. You'll probably notice that I made all the text much smaller than the original table. But I think in this case, it's okay to do that because this presentation wouldn't be projected on a big screen. This would probably be sent by email, so the person that receives this presentation can take their time and just read it. I mean, it's okay if the text is smaller. Now, our next slide is this key messages to deliver. And as I already said, we're going to try to improve the icon situation here. So when it comes to icons and visuals, I think the most important thing is to make sure that they all have the same style. Again, if you're using icons with color, make sure that all of them has color, because here in this case, this one is yellow, which isn't even a brand color. Then the other one is black. This one is like gray, and this one is too big. So they're really all different. So I'm gonna share with you a website that I use a lot to find icons. It's this one in here. It's called Streamline. It's a paid service. It's a paid library, but I use it a lot. I use it in almost every presentation that I do. So you have an enormous icon library. You have lots of different concepts and lots of different icons, and you have all of them available in 3 styles. You have this thin line icons, then a little bit thicker ones, and then the solid bold ones. So another good thing about Streamline is that you can select color and make it custom, and you can download it in custom size as well, in many different formats. So it's pretty handy. Now, what I did to this slide is to select all the icons with a very similar, See? I selected the icons to be exactly with the same style. They're all set to purple. And I also added this shape that resembles messages. And I think now it looks much more coherent. Also, what I did to my text here is to align it again to the left. And I'll align it all to the left, and I align it again with the shape. So you can see that if I take a guide here, you can see that the point is exactly aligned with the text in all of them. Okay. Now, if you're making a slide like that with 4 different columns, an important thing is to make sure that all the text blocks has more or less the same width and they're distributed evenly. Okay, so they have the same amount of space between them. And the same about icons. Make sure that they're aligned inside the shape and between them. So I think, yeah, everything is about trying to align all the elements between them. So that creates a lot of balance and order in the slide. Now our next slide is this one. This is the confusing slide. Here I have to be honest, the decision of how to reorganize the elements kind of came naturally to me. I felt like it should be in 2 columns. So let me show you the result. Okay. Now there is no question of which text comes with which image. I also make the images slightly bigger. And this is just to play around. I put it like this on the 90% angle. But it can also, this title can also go here on top. Like that. It can totally work like this as well. Another thing that I did here is to give a little bit more of emphasis to this last sentence, the estimated size of the market. And now the next slide, the style board. Here, as I said before, I felt like the person who did this presentation tried to use every pixel of the slide to fill it with text. I really think that this one looks much better. Again, it's not going to be projected on a big screen. It's going to be sent by email, so it can be perfectly read like this without any problem. So usually when I find these big chunks of text that I can't separate in any way, what I do to improve a bit the look and the readability of this element is to find a sentence or a line that represents the text the most, and I highlight it a little bit. In this case, I made it just a few points bigger and with a darker color and set it to bold. So before reading the whole paragraph, you can go to this phrase, read it, and you will know what it's all about. So you can decide whether you want to read the whole paragraph or not. Then the style board itself already looked kind of good. It's well organized. The only thing I did is to add the extra space between the images because some of them were joined together. But yeah, this is a pretty simple slide. Now this is another table, social media channels. When I first saw this table, I immediately felt like something was wrong about the green axis, the green crosses. The reason I felt that is because usually there are some associations that we have that are naturally ingrained in our brain. Something like green being used for good things, right, or for okay, and red being the wrong choice. So normally, those icons are, you'll probably see this a lot, the green check symbol, and then the red cross. So seeing the green cross was kind of like, are the features there, or is it wrong? Is it right? What is it? So what I did to this slide is to organize it exactly like I did with the first table, leaving just the structure with the thin lines. And I replaced the icons here. Again, I found them on Streamline. And instead of the cross or X, I put this simple check symbol. So there is no question about whether it's right or wrong. Now, this slide, I think it's the one that needed most work and improvement. You can see that the slide is about budget. It says that they want to use 80% of the budget for Facebook and Instagram, and then 10% for Twitter and 10% for Pinterest. When we talk about proportions and percentages, I think a really good way to represent it in this case is a pie chart. So I created this new slide with a pie chart. It's pretty simple, and it was created directly here in Keynote. I put the icons inside and then made the numbers slightly bigger. So you can see the proportion directly. You don't even have to read those numbers, right? You can see it right here. And now let's see the closing slide. I don't really know what they've tried to do here with this purple stripe, but it kind of looks wrong, right? In the case of closing slide, this is kind of the conclusion of the whole strategy, I think. So in this case, I think it would be nice to make the whole slide dark again, just like it was at the beginning with the cover. So it kind of closes the narrative again. So I'm gonna set the background to dark purple. And then the text right now is centered. And the line, you can see that it's super long. So when you open the slide, you kind of don't want to read it, right? So first thing I'm going to do is to set everything to the left, which is our normal way of reading things. We used to read text aligned to the left, and we read from left to right. And also I will do it much shorter. So the line ideally should have 5 to 6 words, so it's easy to read. Right now we have, more or less 5-6 words per line. I'm gonna also change the font. Make it bigger. This one can go to the background. This is the kind of text that it should be there, but you don't really need to read it, right? Like it's a source. Then the last thing is I'm gonna again use play a little bit with the different shades of purple. So I'm gonna set it to light purple. And I'm gonna leave it like that. Also make sure that when you have different paragraphs, this one right here, you can see that this is space, right? So to separate paragraphs, what they do is to create this new space. What I usually do is I change the I change this amount of pixels here so I can control better the separation between paragraphs, because sometimes the whole space is too much. In this case, I'm going to leave it around 15 points. And that's it. Let's see. I'm going to show you the whole presentation again with all the before and after. The whole screen. So there it is. I want to make a little recap of everything that we've said. So first of all, the important thing is to enhance what's important and highlight it visually. Second, mind the white space and let the elements breathe. So make sure that there's enough room for the text and it's not, it doesn't touch any other elements on the slide. Third, make sure all the elements or the similar elements have the same font, the same size, and the same alignment and weight. Next, keep your visuals consistent. Use the same style for your icons, your illustrations, or images. Group related information together. In this case, it was 2 columns, but it's important to know that visually there is one group and there is the other group. So all the related elements always together. Next, when there is too much text, there is a big chunk of text, highlight the most important thing. If a person have only three seconds to read your slide, what's the most important? Make it available to them. Use clear visual language and the symbols that we all know and symbols that doesn't create confusion, like in this case. Represent information visually whenever you can. When you talk about proportion, it's always good to have a graph, or you can show it. And there's many different ways to represent it visually, especially if there's numbers or, yeah. And the last one, keep the lines short, 5-6 words maximum. And when in doubt, always align to the left. Okay? So maybe I can answer some questions now. If you have questions, make sure you write them on the in the comments. Can I mix a standard typography with a handwritten font, for example, for quotes? Yes, you can. But make sure that the handwritten font, they're very tricky and sometimes they're very difficult to read. I see this a lot because we want to make beautiful design. We want to select the typography that we really like. But I think in presentation, especially in presentation, it's very important for another person to be able to read your slide properly. So Yes, but be mindful. Is it better to have lots of slides with a little info on each, or put more information on less slides? Okay, that depends. Depends on the way you're going to use the presentation. For example, if you're presenting live with a real audience on a big screen, then it's better to create a bunch of slides, but with a little, very little information. Make it very visual. And if there is text, maybe just one sentence, nothing more. But if you're using your presentation, if you're going to send it per email or you're going to upload it to the website, then it's okay. It's kind of like our case with the tables. It's okay to have a lot of information if it's meant to have it. So yeah, kind of depend on the context. Could you tell us again which software did you use? Right now, I used Keynote. I work almost always in Keynote. But yeah, I work on Google Slides as well, and sometimes even in PowerPoint. Could you recommend some course? Could you recommend some course or book concerning presentation design and visualization? There is no book that I know about presentation design. If you want to know more about design principles, I think there is a lot of more generic books about design. So yeah, there are some recommendations on typography. There are quite a lot of books on typography, on layout, on grids. It depends on what you want to know. In terms of presentation design, I don't know any book. There's my course on Domestika. And the same about visualization. There are a few books that I have, but they're more about data visualization. So I've got another course coming at the end of this month, which is about custom graphic visualizations. So check it if you want. And presentation designs, yes, there are a lot of people on Instagram and YouTube talking about presentation design, but I don't know any book about it. Maybe I will write someday one. What's a common mistake you see people make in presentations? Well, we just saw quite a lot of mistakes. They're very common. For example, different alignment of text, or a lack of consistency in visuals, mixing a lot of different styles in one presentation, taking one slide from one presentation, one slide from another, putting them all together. Then many times I see people overloading slides with text, which is very common too. Maybe the most common one is not using white space. I would say that just like you saw on one of the slides, we always try to naturally fill all the space available for us with content and with elements, and yeah, it's always better to keep some space and some distance between different elements. Also, the unreadable fonts, another common mistake. Sometimes I'm told I have to make presentations on really short notice. Any tips on how to quickly put together something when you don't have much time to refine its design? I think like the 90% of presentations were made the night before. So it's a very common issue. Maybe if you're not a designer, maybe the presentation templates can be handy. You can find a lot of presentation templates, pretty extensive ones online, and if you buy it once, you can reuse it lots of times. Or maybe even create your own one. Just create a few different types of slides, the ones that you use the most. And then every time you need to make a presentation quickly, you just grab it and replace content. And yeah, the simple, the better. How to make icons matching with presentations. Well, they have to match between themselves, right? So you can find lots of different icons online. And I think in this case, I always try to find the most minimalist design ever, because it can be matched more easily, right? So, for example, the library that I just showed you, the Streamline. It's very easy. It's a big library of lots of different icons, and they all have the same style. So you will never go wrong with that. And how to match it with the rest of the presentation depends on the style, I guess. Just there are some things in design that are very difficult to explain. How do you match it? It should look good. Which one is the best color palette for presentations? Again, there is no one answer to this. Many times the color palette will depend on your brand, if you have one, or your company's brand. What I do for clients that, for example, doesn't have any strict guidelines or doesn't have any branding, what I do is to create a mood board with different visual references, and I kind of take the color palette from there. So I select four different colors, for example, that would match between them. You can also just start to observe things, like if you like an illustration or a design, start to notice what colors are they using, and if you find it nice to look at, probably that's because the colors are matched in the right way. And there are also online tools like Color Hunt, for example, where you can find a lot of inspiration on color palettes, and you can copy paste them directly from there. But I think, yeah, it's a lot about observing what's around you, and there is no right or wrong thing. I saw different presentations using weird, even weird combination of colors, like yellow and blue and green, and if mixed right, and if it communicates the message, then it's going to be right. If you have to create a presentation in, say, half an hour, what are the key elements you focus on? The typography and the alignment, I would say. I always say that less is more, less is better. So if you really have to do it that fast in half an hour, make sure that you're only using one color. You can even do it in black and white, the whole thing, and one other color to highlight. What else in half an hour? That's kind of tricky. Yeah, don't put a lot of information on the slides, I would say. Just one visual, one sentence, one word, and especially if you're going to present in front of the audience, the slides should support your message, not transcript everything that you're saying. Is it okay to vary the layout between different slides? Of course. That's even better. I think a good presentation is a good mix of different layouts. What's important for me, for example, is to keep the same layout for the title, for example, and maybe the footer of the slides when you put the number of the slides or any kind of sources or legal stuff or the logo. Those should always be positioned in the same way, because then when you switch the slides, they shouldn't move. I don't know if that's clear or not, but yeah. So make sure that the frame of the slide is always the same, and then inside you can change a lot, of course, and depends on the content. Sometimes it's better to create different columns. Sometimes it's better to center the content. Yeah. Let's see if there are more questions. Okay, any tips to make a chart look less bland and a bit more visually appealing? A chart. Yeah, I would say for charts, again, I'm repeating myself a lot, but less is better. So I know that some people tend to over-decorate things because of maybe the lack of experience in design. So they put shadows, 3D forms, strokes, and many different elements to make it, I don't know, more interesting to look at. But for me, I always prefer solid colors and thin lines and very little text. So in case of the charts, for example, you don't need to put all the labels in there, just the ones that communicate your message, right? So for example, if it's a pie chart, sometimes you don't even need the legend below, right? Yeah, make it clean, make it solid. And let's take this last one. What's your opinion about animation, more or less? What do you think I'm going to say? Less, always less, especially with animations. In Keynote, there is only one animation, two animations that I use. One is the transition between the slides, which is dissolve. That creates this smooth transition between slides. And then there is another one. It's tricky and it takes some time to learn how to use it right. It's called magic movement, and sometimes it's really nice to create the kind of play from one slide to another. If you make a copy of the slide and only change one small detail, and then you apply magic move to the first slide, it will apply kind of movement to the page, to the elements. So sometimes it really look nice. But besides that, I would say dissolve. That's the only one I would recommend to use. And I think this is it with the questions. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was really great to be here, and thank you, Domestika, for inviting me. I hope to see you in my course or in my courses. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
La idea es como algo muy frágil.
Se me fue la hebra.
I'm going to show you some examples. This is what we've got behind me.
¿Qué más preguntas tengo por aquí? ¿Cómo descubriste que lo tuve?